Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. This Saturday is UFC 273, and in the featured fight on the main card, we have Gilbert Burns versus Khamzat Chimaev, and this is going to be my full breakdown and prediction for this highly anticipated welterweight fight. And you have two title fights on the UFC 273 main card. You have in the co-main event Aljamain Sterling versus Piotr Jan 2, unifying the bantamweight title. Then in the main event, you have Alexander Volkanovski defending his featherweight title against fan favorite Korean Zombie. And I'll actually be doing prediction videos for both those fights, so make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss those videos. But the point I'm getting to is I can say with utter confidence the fight that the majority of fight fans are most excited for on UFC 273. It felt like it took forever to come to fruition, but it's Gilbert Burns versus Khamzat Chimaev. There is such a high level of intrigue in this fight. There's such a crazy amount of hype behind Khamzat Chimaev. It is just insanity. I mean, how rare is it that we see a guy come into the UFC and within a few fights he destroys some guys who aren't, the elite of the elite within the division, but he beats them so easily. And he generates the amount of star power that Khamzat Chimaev has, that he's able to get the UFC to fast track him to a potential title shot by giving him a top contender like Gilbert Burns. It is just insane to me. Usually when we see a contender come into the UFC who, people are excited about, get some good wins outside of the rankings, we usually see them slowly creep their way up the rankings. Not Khamzat Chimaev. The UFC has given him Gilbert Burns because if he is able to defeat Gilbert Burns, they are giving him a title shot. And I know supposedly in June or July, we're going to get Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards 2 for the welterweight title. But the winner of this fight, especially if it's Khamzat, is going to be fighting for the title next. And honestly, I made a video about a week ago. I think there is a chance that Khamzat Chimaev could leapfrog Leon Edwards. If he goes out there and just obliterates Gilbert Burns, gets a massive win, I could see the UFC saying, you know what, Leon? Go win another fight. Let's extend that win streak a little bit more and beat a top contender. We're going to go with Khamzat Chimaev. But also, if Gilbert Burns can go out there and defeat Khamzat Chimaev, shut down a massive hype train in Khamzat Chimaev, I think there could be an argument made for him to get another crack at Kamaru Usman as well. So I think this is a very compelling fight. I think it's a very important fight. And I cannot wait. It feels like so long that this fight has been supposedly in the works. I'm so glad it's finally here. So if you look at the tail of the tape for this fight, you have Gilbert Burns, who's ranked number 2 in the UFC official rankings. You have Khamzat Chimaev, who's ranked number 11 in the UFC official rankings. Burns is 35. Khamzat is 27. Burns is 5'10". Khamzat is 6'2". Burns has a 71-inch reach, and Khamzat Chimaev has a 75-inch reach. So a reach and a height advantage for Khamzat Chimaev. And also, we all know it, there's a size advantage for Khamzat Chimaev. So if you look at Khamzat Chimaev's resume, he is 10-0 in his pro MMA fights, and he has 4 fights within the UFC. He came in, he defeated John Phillips via Darschoke, just destroyed him, absolutely destroyed him. Then he fought Reese McKee. 10 days later, destroyed him as well. And again, I know he destroyed these guys, but look at the level of competition. I don't think John Phillips is no longer in the UFC. I don't think Reese McKee is no longer in the UFC. Then he gets a fight with Gerald Meerschaert. And Gerald Meerschaert was a decent, slight step up in competition. And he goes out there, one punch KOs him, picture perfect straight right hand, just sleeps Gerald Meerschaert. And since that win over Gerald Meerschaert, I mean, it has aged quite well. Gerald Meerschaert's on a little bit of a winning streak right now. That win has aged well. Then he was supposed to, and I talk about this all the time, after the Gerald Meerschaert win, that was in September of 2020, we were supposed to get, basically what we're getting now. We were supposed to get Khamzat Chimaev versus Leon Edwards in December. And I remember being so excited for this fight because it's just so intriguing when you have a guy who's kind of unproven in Khamzat Chimaev. He hasn't fought the elite of the elite, even though he's looked great, versus a guy who is at the top of the division. It's just so rare. We never see it. I can't even think of another example of this happening in the UFC. I'm sure there is, and it's probably like a short notice opponent replacement or something like that. But it was just insane. And of course, Leon Edwards pulled out in December. It was rescheduled for January. Khamzat pulled out. Then it was rescheduled for March. Khamzat pulled out, and then he was out all the way until October of last year when he defeated Li Jingliang. And I thought this was more of a natural progression. I mean, Li Jingliang is a decent opponent. He's ranked in the top 15. I don't remember where he was ranked when Khamzat fought him, but it was more of a natural progression than jumping all the way to the top in Leon Edwards, even though I badly wanted to see that Leon Edwards fight. Goes out there, defeats Li Jingliang, just destroys him in the first round, picks him up, carries him over to Dana White, slams him down, and then eventually chokes him out at UFC 267. Phenomenal win over a legit opponent in Li Jingliang. A great win for Khamzat Chimaev. And now we're at this fight with Gilbert Burns. Now, if you look at Gilbert Burns' resume, you have Gilbert Burns who's coming off I don't want to say it's a lackluster performance, but it wasn't the most impressive win over an aging Wonderboy Thompson. That was at UFC 264 back in July of last year. It was on the Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor 3 card. And basically in this fight, he just went out there and he was able to take Wonderboy down, control him on the ground and pound him. He wasn't able to get a submission. He wasn't able to really get close to a finish, but he just controlled Wonderboy Thompson for the entire fight and got a 30-27 victory. Before that was his title shot against Kamaru Usman. He was so close. He hurt Usman early in this fight, but Usman is able to recover, comes back and hits Gilbert Burns with a power jab, drops him to the ground, then just finishes him off with ground and pound. Kamaru Usman just showing how good he is. Before that, he defeated Tyron Woodley. And one thing I want to mention about this Tyron Woodley fight, Tyron Woodley was just coming off the loss to Kamaru Usman. I know Tyron Woodley, the win has not aged very well. Woodley, has lost like 20 million fights in a row at this point, some to guys who he shouldn't really be losing to. But at the time, it was a solid win, and a lot of people forget about it. Gilbert Burns stepped in on short notice to take on Tyron Woodley. Originally, it was supposed to be Leon Edwards versus Tyron Woodley. Leon Edwards was stuck over in the UK. Gilbert Burns kind of decided to step up and take on Woodley. And it was a massive challenge at the time. I don't remember where Burns was in the rankings, but Woodley was ranked number 1 at the time. And then, I wanted to mention about Gilbert Burns. He's kind of made his name taking fights on kind of short notice. He got a big win over Gunnar Nelson on short notice back in 2019. Then after that, he went on to TKO Damian Maia, and then obviously the fights that I already went through in Tyron Woodley, Kamaru Usman, and Wonderboy Thompson. But Burns has looked so good at welterweight. He's a former lightweight. I know a lot of people, when breaking down this fight, are mentioning the loss to Dan Hooker back in 2018. But I don't know how much to make of that. Was Gilbert Burns draining his body to get down to 155? It's hard to say. People say he's chinny. I know he got hurt badly, but that was a nasty jab by Kamaru Usman. And then the follow-up with the ground and pound was incredible. But also another thing I want to mention about Gilbert Burns. A lot of people talk about his jiu-jitsu. He has great jiu-jitsu. He has 24 pro MMA fights. He has 8 by submission. Now, that's a decent amount of submissions. But I do want to mention, none of these elite level guys is he able to submit. He did not submit Wonderboy Thompson, even though he controlled him for the majority of the fight. His last submission was all the way back in 2019 against Mike Davis. I don't even know who Mike Davis is at this point. I can't even remember. Before that, against a guy in 2016 whose name I can't even pronounce, and I definitely don't remember him. So even though Gilbert Burns has elite level submission skills, it's hard for me to say at the top level of competition that I'm not able to say confidently that he's able to submit some of these guys. It's crazy because I feel like a lot of people looking at this fight, they're saying, oh, Gilbert Burns by submission. I don't see that as a real path to victory for Gilbert Burns. It's possible, of course, because he does have phenomenal jiu-jitsu, but I don't see that as a very likely outcome. So when I look at this fight, it's really hard for me to break down, honestly. I've been flipping back and forth, flipping and flopping back and forth. Is Gilbert Burns going to win? Is Khamzat going to win? Khamzat Chimaev has a massive size advantage over Gilbert Burns. But there's just so many unknowns about Khamzat Chimaev. We don't know really what his cardio is like, especially after he had COVID in 2020, 2021. He's only gone against Li Jingliang, and it's only gone 1 round, and he's really met no resistance. So I wonder how his stamina is going to hold up. I also wonder about his chin. We've never really seen him take hard shots from pretty much anybody. Every fight that I've seen of Khamzat Chimaev is pretty much just a dominant win by him. He never really eats any shots. So I'm a little bit worried about his chin. And usually when I look at a fight like this and we see a guy like Khamzat Chimaev who's looked amazing, but he hasn't fought elite level competition, and then we have a guy like Gilbert Burns where sure he has his losses, but he's been fighting elite level competition. We've seen him tested against legit guys. I usually almost always lean to the side of the guy that I feel like is more known, has more experience. We've seen him test it more against elite level competition. It's just, when I make a prediction, that's almost always the way I lean. And that's why I've been struggling with this pick, because I am going with Khamzat Chimaev via second round TKO. And it was really hard for me to come to this prediction, but I just think that Khamzat Chimaev's grappling ability is just so solid. On top of that, I think he has a massive size advantage. We've seen him in that wrestling match with Jack Hermanson where he was just ragdolling a guy who's a pretty solid middleweight. And I know this is not wrestling. I know this is an MMA fight. I know there's strikes involved. There's all these other things involved. But just to see the sheer strength by Khamzat Chimaev to toss Jack Hermanson around was just insane to me. And then you have Gilbert Burns, who's on the little bit smaller side of the welterweight division. I just don't think it's going to bode well for him. And, when I initially heard of this potential matchup and I was looking at these two fighters, I was thinking, well, maybe Khamzat Chimaev is going to strike with Gilbert Burns because he's going to be worried about the jiu-jitsu and the submission threat of Gilbert Burns. And that still could be true. I toss that back and forth as well. But I don't think Khamzat Chimaev is going to be worried about it. I think he's big, he's strong, he has good jiu-jitsu, he has good submission skills himself, and he has a great top game. And it's hard to go for a submission and get a submission when you're getting grounding pounded to death by a guy like Khamzat Chimaev, who has some of the nastiest ground and pound that we've seen. The only guy I can think to compare him to as far as ground and pound goes, and I know it's a little premature because he hasn't fought elite level competition, but it's Khabib Nurmagomedov. There's some guys that'll get you down, just control you on the ground. They'll just be happy with these little pitter-patter punches. And there's some guys that take you down and they look to smash your skull in. And that's Khamzat Chimaev. That's what he wants to do. I think Khamzat Chimaev has so many paths to victory. I think he could go out there and, I'm a little bit worried about the striking against, an elite level fighter like Gilbert Burns who has solid striking. But I think the power of Khamzat Chimaev, and I'm a little bit worried about Gilbert Burns' chin. I think Khamzat could go out there and outstrike him. I wouldn't be super confident in saying that. But, I think also Khamzat Chimaev could potentially submit Gilbert Burns. That would not shock me. When you're on the ground, being controlled and being ground and pounded, you leave your neck open, you leave submissions open. And I think that Khamzat could do that. But I think the most likely scenario is, I think the first round is going to be close. I think Gilbert Burns is going to go out there. I think Gilbert Burns is going to try to keep it standing. I think that's what he wants to do. Maybe Khamzat Chimaev is going to come out and just try to strike with him and try to KO him. But I think as the fight goes on, I think Gilbert Burns is not going to get out of there early. I think Khamzat's going to duck under, take him down, control him on the ground. Probably maybe half of the first round. There's going to be a little bit of striking exchanges early in the first round. And I think he's going to control him, beat him up, but I think Gilbert Burns will be able to survive the first round. I think he's going to be decent on his back. He's going to be trying to set up submissions, but they're just not going to be there for him. And I think the second round is going to come out. Gilbert Burns is going to be a little bit tentative to throw his hands because now he's been controlled on the ground for the entire first round or the majority of the first round. And I think Khamzat Chimaev is going to duck under, take him down again, and just control him on the ground and just start smashing him with ground and pound. And I'm going to say a late second round TKO via ground and pound Khamzat Chimaev. And it's just crazy because it's very rare that we have a guy, arguably he has 4 fights in the UFC. 2 of those guys that he's beaten aren't even in the UFC anymore. And I am picking him to beat a proven guy like Gilbert Burns. And I know that Khamzat Chimaev has a bit of a hype train. And I think I've seen all the things that people are saying about the odds for this fight. Khamzat Chimaev is a massive favorite. I think that Gilbert Burns still has a legitimate chance. I could see a path to victory for Gilbert Burns via decision. I could see Gilbert Burns being able to keep the fight standing and potentially outstrike Khamzat Chimaev. I don't think that's very likely, but I think it's possible. I could see Gilbert Burns potentially. I mean, Gilbert Burns has pretty good power as well. He's not brutally KOing guys, but he has some decent power, and we have not seen Khamzat Chimaev's chin tested. I could see Gilbert Burns landing a KO blow, maybe knocking him down and then TKOing him with ground and pound, or maybe clipping him and then looking in a scramble, catching him with a guillotine or something like that. But I just don't think those are super likely. I wish this fight was 5 rounds, because if it does go 3 rounds, I would have liked to seen it go 5 rounds. I would have liked to seen Khamzat Chimaev's gas tank. And I think any fight that is anywhere close to a #1 contender fight, and this fight is very close to a #1 contender fight. I think it is a #1 contender fight. I think it should be 5 rounds regardless. I just think the size advantage for Khamzat, the power advantage for Khamzat, the strength advantage for Khamzat is just going to be too much for Gilbert Burns. I think Gilbert Burns is going to get controlled on the ground, and I don't think that Khamzat is going to be worried about the submission threat of Gilbert Burns. I know Kamaru Usman was, but I just think Khamzat has the ability that he can take Gilbert Burns down, control him on the ground, avoid the submission, and eventually get that stoppage. And, you know, it's going to be crazy because with 5 fights in the UFC, this will be his 5th fight in the UFC. If he gets this win, there's no doubt in my mind his next fight will be for a title. Whether it's Kamaru Usman, whether it's Leon Edwards, it will undoubtedly be for a title. And that is just so unprecedented. And Khamzat Chimaev is already one of the biggest stars in the UFC, in my opinion. And if he wins this fight, and especially if he wins it in dominant fashion, and then potentially wins a title, I mean, his star power is going to grow immensely, and it's going to be insane. But I do want to put one caveat on all this. I think there is a chance, a very small chance, that Khamzat Chimaev could be exposed in this fight. We have not seen him against elite level competition. I don't know how many times I have to say that. We have not seen him tested against elite level competition. So while he looks super dominant and amazing, it's against guys like Reese McKee and John Phillips and, you know, Gerald Meerschaert. And I know the Gerald Meerschaert win is aged well, and I know the Li Jingliang win is decent. But when you take these guys who look so impressive against these guys who are, you know, lower level, and then you toss him against a world-class welterweight like Gilbert Burns, there is a chance that he is exposed here. I wouldn't personally call him a fraud if he does lose to Gilbert Burns, because Gilbert Burns is an elite level fighter. So, but I think we should be pumping the brakes a little bit. I think that Gilbert Burns has a significant chance to win this fight. I don't think, you know, I'm 100% certain Khamzat Chimaev is going to win this fight. I could see and understand why someone would pick Gilbert Burns. I've thought about it multiple times about picking him, but I just think that Khamzat Chimaev, it just seems like there is a special aurora around this guy. And it just seems like something special is happening. And he just looks so dominant against these low-level guys. I think even though he's taking a step up in competition, I just think as good as he's looked against some of these lesser guys, I think he will still be able to perform against a guy like Gilbert Burns. And it is going to be crazy to see, because if he goes out there and wins against Gilbert Burns, I mean, Khamzat Chimaev's name will blow up even more than it already is. So definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments. Again, I'm going Khamzat Chimaev, 2nd round TKO via ground and pound. I don't think Gilbert Burns is going to be able to submit him. He's not submitting some of these elite level guys at welterweight. I think Khamzat gets it done. I think he controls Gilbert on the ground. Gilbert's just too small. Khamzat's too big, too strong, too good on the ground, has nasty ground and pound. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.